The central theme of Final Fantasy III is hope. Hope for the future, hope that the past wasn't all for nothing, and finding hope in the present, even when the path ahead is uncertain. It is my hope that through this review I can crystallize those thoughts so other people can know, and maybe even relate to them. My name is Merlin, and this is the introduction to a video series called The Great Final Fantasy III in Review. To be honest, I don't know what lies ahead. My mission statement with this series is to say everything I've ever wanted to say about the game, and that's what I intend to do. The road, while unpaved, is rife with curiosity and mystery, with an eternal wind and the spirit of adventure to guide us. And so, as they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Final Fantasy III, the third installment in the legendary Japanese role-playing game franchise. Released on April 27, 1990 for Nintendo's Famicom by Squaresoft, it is the second Final Fantasy game of its time to never be localized. In Japan, the game is regarded as a classic, appearing on the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console and even the Famicom Classic. Developers claim that the game's regional exclusivity was due to a variety of factors, mainly the then massive scope of the game maxed out the cart's memory, and with the Super Famicom on the horizon, there wasn't enough manpower at the time to localize the game. In the early 2000s, Squaresoft sought to remake it for Bandai's handheld WonderSwan color. However, the game's content once again held it back from development, and to this day, only these screenshots exist of this project. From then on, Final Fantasy III was always due for a re-release of some sort. This remark by the developers never made much sense to me though, because they remade Final Fantasy IV for WonderSwan. Perhaps 4 was easier to program given the lack of jobs and side quests? I don't know, and we may never know the truth, sadly. In 2004, Square decided that 3 would finally be remade. It was originally considered for PlayStation 2, which would have been amazing, in my opinion. Imagine if it was remade like Dragon Quest V's PlayStation 2 port. However, Nintendo had asked Square to remake it for the Nintendo DS, and so, on October 7th of 2004, Square revealed that a remake of this long-lost classic was finally in development. After 16 long years, on August 24th of 2006, Final Fantasy III released for the first time in English on Nintendo DS and has since been ported to a variety of platforms. 15 years later, in 2021, the 2D version of 3 was remade into the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster lineup of games. A true to the original port, this is yet another accessible way of playing the series' third installment. Not the best version in my opinion, but a great game with a fantastic soundtrack. In this video series, I will go over everything within Final Fantasy III and many extra related things in great detail. This consists of, but is not limited to, the original game, the remake, Pixel Remaster, the gameplay and soundtrack, and FF3 references throughout the series. One of the catalysts for this review was that in 2020, I completed the PlayStation Portable version of FF3. All MasterCards, 100% Bestiary, level 99, all jobs maxed out, and all treasures obtained. Originally, I did not really enjoy the 3D remake on Nintendo DS. The PlayStation Portable version, however, steps it up by featuring the ability to switch between the rearranged and original soundtracks, not unlike that of the PS4 and Switch versions of the Pixel Remaster. Along with this, the game has an excellent and insightful gallery of development illustrations from both the original 1990 game and 2006 remake. As much as I like the Onion Knights, I do believe that either this or the Steam version are the most optimal ports because they're the most balanced in terms of the jobs. Moving on, Final Fantasy III is often considered the series' black sheep due to Final Fantasy V and Tactics featuring cross-classing, the ability to mix and match different job abilities you learn. I admit I do prefer the job system in 5, but 3 shouldn't be forsaken for being, quote, bare bones like how most people suggest. It actually works similar to Final Fantasy XIV's jobs, and that using a job is like choosing a character in a fighting game. They're like different tool sets that you can work with. 3's job system is different because it's not about role refinement and character customization, but rather environmental adaptation and character selection that, with today's technology, could be something truly special if put in the right developer's hands. Speaking of being the black sheep, it tends to carry this reputation because many Western players consider the story and characters to lack any real depth or memorability, unlike, say, FF7 or FF10, but I beg to differ. Final Fantasy III tells a simple yet whimsical tale. On a continent far, far away, an earthquake of terrifying magnitude rips open a cave near the town of Urn. 4 children called the Onion Kids venture off from their hometown to explore. However, finding themselves lost, they bicker amongst one another over having plummeted into a dark, creepy hollow. Luckily, they manage to brave through by banding together and slaying the nasty monsters within it. They come upon an underground shrine and are met with the Wind Crystal. The Great Crystal spoke to them, forewarning an imbalance of light and dark within the world and terrible things to come. In light of this, the Wind Crystal chose the 4 as the warriors of the light and blessed them with legendary latent power. And so, they journey around their continent encountering many different trials. Soon enough, the heroes experience a new revelation. A whole wide world exists far beyond the clouds, frozen in time for the last millennium, the surface world, and that their continent was only the beginning. At the helm of their airship, the Light Warriors chart their course for a forgotten past, with only a cold and ancient wind to light their path. The next and primary part of the review is an in-depth, chaptered analysis on the symbolic and philosophical meanings behind the world, story, and lore of Final Fantasy III, sequenced by the game's natural progression. The 3D remake is more modern in its presentation, while the original and Pixel remaster are a lot more mythic, fairy tale-like, and biblical, if that makes sense. And so, while I will be referring to all 3 versions of the game, the Steam port of the 3D remake will be used as the base of each chapter simply because I believe it to be the best for presentation. I want to be very transparent and put this disclaimer here. Any and all of my speculations, questions, conclusions, or ideas is all my interpretations and not intentionally indicative of the developer's intentions. I will also be referencing and quoting a lot of different material. All sources and credits will be linked via a document in the description of each video. Final Fantasy III is without a doubt my favorite NES/Famicom game of all time. I've done many playthroughs of it, over 20 in fact, across all of its myriad ports. Okay, not all. I really want to play the Ouya version, but anyway. This game is one of the most thought-provoking and awe-inspiring pieces of media in all of its aspects that I may ever consume in my lifetime. I want to find out why exactly it has captured my interest and imagination ever since I was a child. FF3 is a fantastic work of art, and the amazing thing about that is that, like any great work, it is a wellspring from which endless meaning can be derived. My goal is to simply analyze the game in order to show you, the viewer, the magic of this game through my eyes. Thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to me talk about this game, and please take your time, sit back, and enjoy. The Golgan thus prophesied, the earthquake was only the beginning. The great tremors had swallowed the crystals, the light of our world, only to spawn monsters from the depths of the scarred land, are nothing but harbingers of what has yet to come. Something is coming, fathomless, ominous, and full of sorrow. But hope is not yet lost. 4 souls will be blessed with light, and so it shall begin. Prologue. Light ahead. The adventurous orphan boy named Luneth plummets into a dark cave, his curiosity having gotten the better of him. Recovering from the fall, Luneth gazes upon the hole from which he fell from above, seeing only bright light ahead. With the light distant and now out of reach, Luneth begins to brave this eerie cave, wondering just what he's gotten himself into this time. Blind to what lay in his path before, the boy takes his first steps slowly and carefully. And suddenly, a group of rabid goblins attacks out of nowhere from the shadows. With only a simple knife at his disposal, Luneth defeats the goblins, finding himself out of breath and perplexed at this terrifying occurrence. Taken aback by this anomaly, he grows worrisome at the precariousness of the setting. Continuing on, Luneth finds treasure consisting of a variety of loot. To his surprise, he finds an assortment of armor, weapons, and magical items. He also discovers a switch which opens a hidden passageway. The boy encounters more frightening monsters as he moves through the cave, one of which is called Eye Fang. I think this enemy symbolizes that what is to be seen or catches your eye may bite or hurt, or that there are things that hurt, but through the pain your eyes will be opened. Soon enough, Luneth discovers a wellspring, and upon drinking from it, his strength is replenished. Wellspring, a word that refers to the original and bountiful source of something, such as how one's pets may be a wellspring of affection. In this instance, Luneth has plunged unexpectedly into the terrifying unknown, but here he finds a wellspring that replenishes his strength. It shows that there are aspects to the unknown which are life-giving and restorative, especially when you first experience it. At the end of his path, Luneth enters a hollow and sees a ruined altar inside for which the cave is named, the Altar Cave. Only making a few steps towards the altar, dark energy surrounds Luneth, summoning a grotesque tooth-shelled reptile, the land turtle. Menacing in its presence, the land turtle attacks without warning. Upon its defeat, a mellow voice calls to the boy, "You have been chosen." Startled, Luneth listens as the voice goes on. "Warrior from the land of darkness, you have been chosen as the bringer of hope." Hearing this, Luneth walks further, beholding a wondrous crystal emitting a bright green hue, intriguingly hovering above an altar. The voice resonates from the crystal once more. Darkness is threatening to engulf the world. When light is lost, the equilibrium will be no more. Luneth fails to comprehend the magnitude of the crystal's words. There are others who share your destiny. You must seek them out. Once you find them, I will bestow upon you our last light, our last hope. Now go! Luneth becomes blinded by an increasingly luminous light. He soon becomes aware that he's now outside. Still trying to grasp this revelation of light, Luneth heads back to his hometown of Ur. How the hell do we grasp any of this? Let's recap a bit. Anytime I hear the Altar Cave theme, I can't help but feel like something is coming. Like we're on the precipice of something, but we're in darkness and heading towards the light. And that whatever was beyond the light, upon being enlightened, I'd be forever changed, altered. That is where I believe the name Altar Cave holds its meaning, and that it is the cave which houses the Wind Crystal's altar, and that it forever alters those who have visited. The goblins Luneth encountered at the beginning are considered a staple within the realm of Final Fantasy. The word goblin comes from the Norman French word gobelinus, which holds the name of a ghost that haunted the French town of Évreux in the 12th century. With this in mind, one has to wonder, given what happened, what other ghosts might spook us in the future. Another thing is that it's strange how the turtle is in an underground cave but is apparently a land turtle, which could imply that things are not in its proper order. So, what does this lead one to believe? Perhaps the turtle lingered down there a little before Luneth, or perhaps it is a deliberate trial summoned forth by the Wind Crystal. What about the earthquake? What are the long-term effects of a catastrophe of this magnitude? To quote clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson, quote, When you're walking along and something unexpected happens to you, you basically fall into a hole. And that hole is the great complexity that underlies your currently made assumptions. It's a whole different place. Peterson continues, it's the water you plunge into when the ice beneath your feet breaks, the thin ice you're always skating on. It's the underworld of the ancients. It's hell. It's the place you go when you're desperate, anxious, and unhappy. It's the source of all terrible things, but at the same time, it's also the source of all possibility, because as the unexpected and anomalous itself, it is not only everything that can terrify and destroy you, it is also everything new that can emerge as a consequence of old habits and presuppositions falling apart. One level of representation that we use for that domain and the denizens of that domain is prey animal, and so that is roughly toothy reptile. It's a complex of things that will destroy you in a predatory manner. The other domain of symbolism is, quote, that which lies outside tribal territory, that's no man's land. On one end, you can go out the physical borders of your community, as in literally leaving home, and on the other end, you can go out the metaphysical boundaries of your community by acting out a culturally sanctioned role and failing. Because as soon as you fail, then you're somewhere your culture isn't, and that, for all intents and purposes, is unexplored territory. The beginning of the 2D versions of Final Fantasy III is virtually the same, but instead of Luneth, it features 4 nameless Onion Kids, or Onion Knights, who, when they fall into the cave, are bickering amongst each other as to how they fell into this ditch. Given that the Onion Kids are stylized as babies, and that their first time speaking in-game is in the Altar Cave, one can say they first become conscious upon falling down the hole. How Luneth says he didn't notice a hole there, but now he does, implies a figurative blindness. In the end, the kids manage to save themselves from the dark cave, but what is the Altar Cave? How deep does this hole go? Simply put, the Altar Cave is the deep rabbit hole, an omen of unknown things to come, but the cave itself is short. In life, when you're falling, you don't know how deep the hole may go. There's a line in the New Testament that references, if the blind lead the blind, won't they fall into a ditch? This indeed is true, for the Onion Knights were blind to the hole in the beginning. Luneth was led by his previously blind sense of adventure, which wasn't given direction until the Wind Crystal had enlightened him that there are those who share his destiny. The Wind Crystal not only granted the kids direction through putting wind in their step to seek out and fight evil, but it also healed their blindness and granted vision through the crystal's revelation. Seeing as the kids saved themselves, who else might they be able to save from their own Altar Cave?